Yeah, so we're going to start off by watching this video. I need to put my share sound on.
Our vehicle now speeds along at a normal rate instead of incredibly fast or incredibly slow. And now we want it so that we, instead of just driving straight through this box, actually can collide with it. In order to simulate physics in our world, we actually need to add something to both our obstacle and our vehicle. And we'll do that using our components. So our component system can add a lot of different properties that people regularly use. In this case, a property that people will commonly use for physics is a rigid body, which is a physics concept, and in this case allows us to interact with this truck here that we have as if it had real simulated physics on it. So now it's a solid object. You can see that on the rigid body component in our inspector. It has a mass, so we can actually make this heavier. We can use gravity or we cannot use gravity. So there's all of these different options. In fact, I think our inspector is getting a little bit too crowded, so you can actually click on the little arrows next to all component names, and it will compress down each of the different options. So that's certainly very handy if you have a lot of different components. So now we can see our rigid body component, which is great. And then on our obstacle, we can also go and with our obstacle selected in the inspector, we click add component. If we type in rigid body again, we can add another rigid body. So now our obstacle and our vehicle both have rigid bodies, which means they're both using physics, they both have mass, they both use gravity. So that's really helpful. And then one other important component to note in our list of components in our obstacle and our vehicle is actually these mesh colliders that we have on both of our objects. And our colliders are basically our ways of telling our simulated world that these objects can be collided with. So it knows that because there's a collider on this, when it runs into something like the ground or when it runs into something like our vehicle, it should do something like make it stop because we have a rigid body on it. So if we actually press play, you can see our vehicle collides with our crate. It goes flying off. If we were to turn any one of these things off, so for example, on our obstacle, if we turn off our mesh collider, our box actually just flies straight through the ground, and that's because our mesh collider is telling our game world that the box no longer collides with our road, so therefore it can just fly straight through because it's not supposed to collide. So really fun things that you can do. And just to kind of make our little driving game simulation a bit more realistic, we're going to increase the masses of these two objects just to make it a bit more fun, make it interesting. So we'll make our obstacle, our little crate, maybe about 20 kilograms or so. And then the mass of our vehicles, I don't know, maybe something like 1,000. So now this has even more weight behind it. So when it hits that box, we see a slightly different effect happen. Yep, see? So took much longer for that crate to fly over the vehicle because it was much heavier. So, fun little things you can do to create better simulated worlds in your games using things like colliders to tell your objects to know when they've collided with something like our vehicle and our box, or even our box and our road. Using rigid bodies to be able to create physics on our objects, so that way our obstacle actually has weight, our vehicle has weight, and we're using gravity, so it's actually being pushed down into the ground at all times. So what you're going to do is on your vehicle, you're going to select it in your hierarchy, and you're going to go into the inspector on the right side, click Add Component, and you're going to add a rigid body. And then the same thing you'll do with your obstacle, select it in the hierarchy, go to the inspector, click Add Component, and then make sure you either search for or select the rigid body component out of the list. So you can do that either by going to Add Component, going to Physics, and then you can see all of the different options like the rigid body, or you can just type in rigid body, and there it is. Super easy. Now it's your turn.
Now I'm going to actually explain it and do what has been said to do in the video. So I'm going to quickly switch my sharing to the Unity. And now that we're on the Unity, the first thing we need to do is get up the vehicle. So the vehicle we're using is probably for most of you going to be the red one. So if we have the vehicle here, we can see that we have the mesh collider, which is basically allowing the vehicle to collide with things, but we don't have the rigid body yet. So to get the rigid body, we need to go down here and we need to press add component. Then we need to type in rigid body. So make sure you don't press the rigid body 2D though. Just press the rigid body with no other letters. So now that it has rigid body, we're going to make the mass bigger. So we're going to put the mass up to 1,000 like it was in the video. And now we're going to go to the obstacles. So first of all, we're going to have a crate. Wait a second. Okay. We will get the crate, the obstacle. And we're going to just move it in front of us by 25. And as you can see, the mesh collider is already on, but it doesn't have the rigid body either. So we're going to get the rigid body there by clicking add component, then typing in rigid body, but not rigid body 2D. And we're going to increase its mass to 20. So what this will do is that both of these things will collide, and they're going to push, and the car is going to push the crate away, which is what is supposed to be happening. So we're going to see what's going to happen in this. So as you can see, the car has moved the crate, and it has moved it a little, it just moved it, shoved it out of the way, and the car just goes falling down. That's basically kind of it to what's happening for this. So if anyone needs help, could you raise your hand quickly before we go on to the next video?
I'm going to lower everyone's hand so that we can. Okay, so if you need help, so you can raise your hand now.